and then I left the corporate world in 97 and ran this business full-time and have been doing so ever since. And I'd always been looking for my real purpose in life, which wasn't certainly sitting in a glass box working for someone else. It was to raise consciousness, to make the world a better place and help people discover their true purpose in life and work out how to actually manifest that, to make a difference here, to increase the amount of love and consciousness in the world overall. So we reach a place where we're more in unity with Source, where we eventually reach a point of actually ascending to the next level of existence. That's sort of a summary of how I got to where I am now. And I work with people on one-on-one sessions and on workshops globally now. After that much work.
So could you just tell us a little bit, because you say, oh yeah, I feel, I could feel like I was awakening, I was waking up. What, for those people who are listening, might think, oh, what does that feel like? How could that look like in someone's life? Because you realized it as you went on, and you had to learn the hard way sometimes for certain things. So how could you explain that a little bit? Just the the main things that people could look out for going through awakening.
Well, from a very young age, I felt that someone wasn't telling me the truth about the world. There was something badly wrong with this world, and that people were going around not telling the truth. I could sense that energetically. I was sensitive, real sensitive energetically from a very young age. And I felt there was something very special I was here to do, and I went looking for that, and no one could tell me. No one at school or university or work could tell me, and they were doing things that didn't seem right. So I went through the normal schooling and university and got a job, and I still was very restless. And so that was actually the reason I left New Zealand, to go and look for this special thing I was here to do. And I was starting to read spiritual books like Shirley MacLaine books, and I was did a bit of transcendental meditation, and I traveled through Asia and got exposed to Buddhism and Thailand, and so I was searching for that special thing, because none of my life really resonated with me, what I've been taught I should do. And that was the awakening, I guess. There's something mysterious I've got to get to, and it's really important. And as I got older, the drive to find that got stronger and stronger. And then I started going to different workshops, and I realized how much emotional separation I was carrying from what we call the soul contract, the energy programming the soul puts in place, which is embodied in our name, our birth certificate name. And I started working out how to heal that, how to clear that, because it means that I felt like I couldn't get to myself. It was almost like I was frozen in this body, locked in a certain way of being, and I couldn't get out. And I wanted to get out and get to my true self, which I felt I hadn't got to. It's sort of a summary. It was just, again, something's not quite right here.
Okay, great. So I think for those who are listening, a good summary of that is to follow the prompts from the inside, right? And go and look for some solutions and for some things that you feel drawn to that maybe can help you.
Yeah, I was wanting to follow trying to get aligned with the natural flow of spirit, or the flow of life, because I felt I wasn't in the flow.
Yeah.
It was very uncomfortable, and I didn't, and eventually in the end, like my job or the life situation I was in. I was really searching for answers, because again, someone was hiding the truth from me. I don't know who it was, but that's how it felt.
We know more now. So, because, I mean, this is the name of the show is the history of Ascension. And this is something, again, like I just said in the beginning, I wanted to, I kind of just was guided and channeled through what I wanted to put out there and how it would look like. So if we talk about the history in terms of actually the history of Ascension, what when was the last time like the Earth went through Ascension, or this kind of same vibrational shift was happening? Could you explain a little bit more about that to us?
Okay, so all that is, or the source, God, whatever you want to call it, is the higher consciousness, which is everything, wanted to know more about itself. So what it did is it performed an out-breath of itself, and it sent its consciousness away from itself. And if you can think of it, say, on the 12th dimension, and we're in the 3rd dimension, this physical reality, its out-breath, and it progressively moved away from itself. And then those parts of itself, some parts of itself started to forget who they were, and they're us, embodied. We each have the spark of source, of God, the divine in us. And we initially forget who we are. And the idea of forgetting who we are is then to go through the journey of embodied life, to remember, actually, that's who we are. We're part of that source. And the process of life is the Creator, little sparks of the Creator in each of us, going through life, doing all our bits and pieces, and then hopefully awakening in consciousness and seeking home, which is what I was actually doing.
Yeah.
And that the journey of life is actually the Creator creating. We are the Creator creating. It's not somewhere out in the universe. We are it. And this happens on many planets. In fact, the whole point of having stars and planets is for the sparks of the Creator to experience embodied life. That's what they were created for. They were there, and then we sort of turned up out of the ooze. And that was the whole point of it. And on each planet, each solar system, there are 3 cycles of ascension around a sun. And on this solar system, there are 3 26,000-year cycles. And we are at the end of the 3rd 26,000-year cycle. So there's been 2 previous cycles of ascension. It's about 75,000 years of process. When embodied life is ready to go through that process, even though the solar system has been here for billions of years. So there have been 2 other civilizations, much more advanced than us, who have actually gone through this process of awakening. Ascension means where enough people have got conscious enough to connect to higher self, and then collectively the entire civilization shifts dimensions. It's like shifting the channel from BBC One to BBC Two. They move to a different reality. And we are at the end of the latest 26,000-year cycle, which is why so much change is happening in the world, why there's this mass spiritual awakening. So that's where we are. So it's very exciting times being at the end of the ascension process.
Yeah, so could you, we could kind of come back to that a little bit, but could you just explain, because obviously there's been civilizations that has ended. So we are looking at ascension, and could you just explain that when we are ascending, a possible feeling of how to live our lives, what kind of, not results, but, what can we expect in theory? Because we're going from the 3rd to the 5th dimension, or the 5th dimension view of living. So just, if you can in a brief, just see what could we expect? What is it we are so much looking for and wanting deep inside of us?
Initially, when we're less conscious here, what happens is that the perception we have this human ego, which is just created by the soul, so we have some interface with the reality and feel separate from all it is that the feeling is that we're small, struggling human beings just trying to earn and learn our way out of this matrix. And life is challenging. And then as we awaken and we realize, there's much more to it than this apparent physical reality, which is just a projection of consciousness. But actually we start to look at, okay, I've got to heal, fix, and save myself. I've actually got to clear on my emotional separation. I've got to raise my consciousness. I've got to human fixate of everyone else around me as well, and the world, and make it better. We begin the path of growth and awakening. And then that goes on for a while. And then the next phase of that is realizing actually we are vast multidimensional masters who are just playing out this role. Like these bodies are like avatars. And actually there is nothing wrong. We are imperfection, just that we're experiencing this limitation, this illusion. And so you go through different states of consciousness when you get there. Once you get to that third state, which is called a fifth dimensional perspective, or realizing you are part of all that is, you can feel it and know it, then you let go of the struggle of daily life, and you start to surrender into going with the flow, going with what we call the spiritual signature, going with what opens your heart in each moment, and having no attachment to the outcome of anything, and letting go all expectation of what should be, just following in a moment what is flowing from your spirit. And that releases a huge amount of stress about life, because you're not attached to anything. Then that opens to all possibilities, letting go of that attachment. The Taoists talk about it, Buddha talked about attachments, it's the greatest form of suffering. And they were talking about the same thing. So in letting go of that and being in the moment and being grounded and present with the flow, what opens your heart in each moment, life will unfold in a very beautiful way. Miracles will happen. Everything that your ego desired may have dropped away, but some of the things you were looking for that you were very attached to may just turn up because you let go of them. So, and if we all move gradually to that state, then what happens is that our actions as light workers that we take, because light workers make up 2 to 3% of the population, this is more highly evolved, experienced souls who come here to take a game of separation from spirit, which is what this is, and then we act as like spice in a curry or something, where a little bit of us raises the frequency, makes it a lot hotter, makes things change and transform. We follow that flow, then our spirit lives through us, it expresses through us from our higher consciousness, and then our mission comes to pass. And if you follow that, you never quite know what's going to happen next, but if you let go, you start to realize and trust that actually it all works out if you just get out of your own way. It's sort of a journey from awakening to really, of being asleep to really awakening to what's going on.
Yeah. So people that are listening today, it's kind of a question for them really, because some people are light workers and they're doing, they're active, actually, making the place a better place. But then there's also those who are awakening. What would be a good advice for those who are not really sure about what they feel everything that you're saying is resonating with them, but they're not really sure where to start? And I'm not asking now about specific solutions, but kind of how to handle their emotions, how to handle the challenges, how to handle, because people go, yes, I recognize this, I feel like I've been challenged, I feel like things are, I'm being squashed and squeezed, and I need to get out of my shell. What's your suggestions?
I think the first thing is to find out, well, what really makes your heart sing? What are you really passionate about? Not what you've been told you should do by the matrix and the system, but what do you really want to do? I mean, for example, I love helping people discover their true soul purpose, use that with the soul contract work, and aligning to that purpose. And then to clear the patterns, emotional patterns in the way of that actually happening. So they spend 80% of their time doing 20% of the important things rather than the things we think we should do, which are usually a waste of time. So and everyone has a particular purpose. It's about finding out what that is, aligning to it, and then getting everything in the way of that out of the way. And that leads to following the open-hearted flow of the spiritual signature. It leads to a much more joyful, fulfilling life. That's the key for every light worker, to bring their mission online. And
so basically what makes them excited,
what excites you,
passionate, makes them feel like they are singing, like in their hearts, that is the key. So even if they don't know the exact, categorized, specific, place they need to be, it's whatever drives the heart, right?
Yeah, because and as you start to do that, the soul will provide the resources and the connections, and you meet the right people and find the right courses, and life unfolds in quite a magical way, and in a quite a different way, not a linear way at all. That's actually the key to happiness and fulfillment, really, by embodied. I'm a lot happier than I was, say, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've experienced like just talking from just putting this show out, it's like instant manifestation, even, because it's something that I felt really excited about. And so that is when instant and manifestation can happen, right?
Things can turn up a lot quicker if you're in the flow.
Yeah. So if you feel it, yeah, exactly, resonating. Yeah, great. So this is kind of more of a technical question, but in history, there's been a lot of enlightened masters. You just already mentioned the Buddha. We've got Muhammad and Jesus, Master Jesus, and other ascended masters. Who would you feel, just generally, who's doing a great job as masters in our world today? Is there any? It doesn't have to be specific people, but any way of being and any way of that you watched and you think, yeah, this is great, that you want to share with us.
Yeah, there are many spiritual teachers and gurus and other high frequency beings who come here to bring their higher consciousness in here, just like Christ did and Krishna and Buddha, because we're all connected into the Christ consciousness grid, which is the interface between earth and space. So all human consciousness is one ultimately. And by bringing a higher conscious being, that increases everyone's consciousness. But what's happening nowadays is that there's a huge influx of light workers in the past 100 years. And so it's about having a lot of people with rising consciousness, much more than, say, in biblical times, who are all contributing towards the ascension process. So everyone's, your individual process of raising consciousness, of clearing your emotional programs, connecting to higher consciousness is key. So enough people do that, and everyone awakens on earth and remembers that they are these vast multidimensional beings. And if we had a critical mass of people, so about, I think it's 1/4%, square root of 1%. Actually, what happens is that it's a square root of 1% of the population, then, which is about 8,000 or 9,000 people, I think. If you hit that threshold frequency, then we all ascend. Then we go to the next dimension of existence, and where the reality as we know it, which is just a projection of consciousness, changes to a different reality, and we're at a much higher frequency level. That's the whole point of it. But also to remember what it's like to actually do that, not forget, which is what normally happens.
Yeah. Could you explain the Christ consciousness grid and what actually happens in terms of energy when somebody does a good act or choose to, clear their blocks so that their vibration is raising and therefore create a good ripple? Could you just explain a little bit, because this is what you just said now about the more people are doing raising consciousness, it's going to affect the rest. But from an energy point of view, what happens?
Well, what happened was that Atlantis sank about 13 to 15,000 years ago because it got hit by a comet or meteorite. And so we dropped in consciousness from the astral plane down to this third dimension. And ever since then, the Ascended Masters have been rebuilding the Christ consciousness grid, which is different sacred geometries energetically that interface between Earth and space. And everyone's been reconnecting to that. Okay, it's about reconnecting to that grid so that all human consciousness has a complete grid, which enables us to be interconnected. And so the idea here is that when you are, every time you clear something within yourself emotionally, every time you raise your frequency, that goes up through you to the grid and affects everyone else.
Yeah.
All 7 to 8 billion of us. And so it's not up to someone else to do it. It's actually each of us is individually responsible for raising our frequency. And so if enough of us do that, then the whole thing rises to another level, and then it does trigger the ascension. It's not like one or two people anymore. It's everybody, or at least the 2 to 3% of light workers who are on this path of awakening.
And what comes to me as well now when you're speaking is that this is from personal experience as well, and from working with people. But when we clear our own, blocks and issues that are standing in our way, even past ancestral lines, can you explain how that works? Because that's amazing how clearing the past can free us up now and going forward.
Yeah, ultimately there's no time, and when we're in a body, the intensity of the emotional experience, as everyone knows, is very strong. So if you track back your physical genetic ancestral line and your spiritual line of the soul, every time you clear a program in yourself, you're clearing it for all your ancestors across time and space.
Amazing.
You may be clearing it off your past lives as well.
Yeah.
And you're also clearing it off human consciousness. So it's not just little you in this body, it's affecting everybody every time you shift something.
That's wonderful. I mean,
so
that's
it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So knowing that when you do something for yourself, you're actually doing for the rest of humanity.
You are, yeah. And then
not about yourself, is it?
Yeah. And someone else doesn't have to deal with it, and your kids don't have to deal with it. It's gone, that layer of separation.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me feel very sort of, very emotional, because it's for the whole of us, and our children as well. So that's fantastic. Okay, so how can you explain when we feel limited and, stuck, if you like, or even in pain? What is the purpose of all this, really? Because it's much nicer to feel free and open and heart aligned and being in the flow and have no worries. Of course, everyone will be there, right? So what's the purpose of this staying small and limited and unknowing?
The journey of each of us is a spark of the divine, of the creator. Is to go to a place of unconsciousness, on being in pain. For example, feeling like a victim, feeling disempowered. The point, if you've created that in your life, I've had that very strongly. The purpose of it is not to punish us, not to stay in that pain. The purpose is to bring our consciousness and turn it into that pain and go deeper into it and transmute it layer by layer into positive power, positive empowerment. If that's actually the program you carry, whatever the program is, it could be unworthiness, it could be trust, whatever, or lack of trust in the flow of the divine. And so it's about going from one polarity to another. In my case, it was going from feeling very disempowered for most of my life to gradually claiming my power back. And that journey, that visceral, emotional journey, being in a body, the soul has a much stronger experience by being in these physical bodies than in the higher dimensions, is the purpose of life. It is the creator creating it. It's having an experience, in my case, going from disempowerment to empowerment. And that journey was the point of this life. It's not about trying to get rid of the pain as quickly as possible. It's actually how you engage with the challenge of life. And most of us want to run away. The ego wants to run away. It's very pain averse. If you run away and avoid it, then the pain doesn't go away, as you noticed. But if you transmute it and work through it, then you become free. Life flows better. About engaging with those programs. And that's actually the whole point of coming, having a whole range of those programs to actually work through, going from one extreme to another. It's not here to punish us. No,
exactly. So just give us some examples of what that would look like in real life. So because people are listening and they're thinking, disempowerment, okay, I understand that, like on a mental level, but what does that look like in real life? What would disempowerment be? For example, we're just picking one now.
It could be, for example, you might have a very unconscious, abusive parent who mistreats you. And then if you've got a disempowerment program because because the matrix or the reality reacts around whatever program is inside you. Okay, nothing is ever done to you here, even though it feels like it at a human level. So there's a program of disempowerment that could create bullying at school, bullying at work. And the whole point is to stand up at each level as best you can with the tools you've got at that time and the level of consciousness you have to transmute that and overcome it. To eventually it stops happening. That's the point, to coming to a point of feeling small like a victim, to actually being sovereign, being strong, open-hearted, and actually having literally earned that power through, it is the hard way at times, it's very, very intense emotionally. Then it's about having earned the right to use that power within and using that consciously and ethically and with integrity out in the world to create change. But if it was just given to you straight away, then you wouldn't have felt the same responsibility towards using it.
No, because you wouldn't have worked through the challenge to actually get.
Because you haven't explored the nuances and all the challenges over all the years.
Yeah. So, so for anyone who's listening, I mean, this is, I think everyone's had challenge in their lives, but the key here really is to bring awareness to it, isn't it?
Bring consciousness to whatever's strongest in your face, bring consciousness to it.
Yeah. And not look outside of yourself. Like, come inside and look at yourself and what is actually going on, rather, because there is, you know, it feels like it's happening to us, like you just said. But the key is to always bring attention back to ourselves.
The ego will always project it on someone else. She is doing this to me, or he is doing this to me. I still have it on bad days, but actually totally inside me.
Exactly.
That's where it is.
Yeah, of course, because it's also, we're not going to go into the details of the soul contract numbers here, but could you just explain how that works, the reflection of what is going on, what's in your fields, basically, or what's in your blueprint, and how the reality actually arranges around that? What's happening in terms of, it's a bit of a law of attraction, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the law of attraction is well known, and the soul contract reading work is basically a means of decoding your birth name, which the soul puts in place, is a specific set of vibrations which, by the law of attraction, create every moment of your life. And you take the birth certificate name, convert it to Hebrew letters and numbers, which are one and the same thing, and then we decode those numbers using a Star of David. And then from that, we can actually work out what your karmic issues are, what talents you have to overcome them, what your goals are in life, and what overall the soul purpose is, what we talked about at the beginning. And when you discover what that is and align with it, life does open and flow, because you stop doing all the things which aren't working. That's what I did back in 1990 when I had my soul contract reading. So that's actually guided me ever since. And I've got progressively more powerful healing tools to clear the pathway for that contract to actualize in terms of my soul destiny or my soul purpose. And life has got a lot better since then.
So it becomes very detailed and more, I'm sure a lot of people who has not heard of the soul contract can still feel like they know their purpose, probably. But it becomes very detailed, doesn't it, the soul contract? So we can break it down in smaller parts, the different. Could you just tell me a little bit about the how we come in with the challenges and what feels hard for us, and how that becomes our gift?
Yeah.
If we choose to work through that. Yeah. That is like it's like the gold dust, right? In our living, how we can live our life in the most optimal way. Yes,
well, we were talking about that a little earlier. So our karma, you have both physical and spiritual karma. Physical karma in the outer world, spiritual is karma in the spiritual inner world we carry around with us. And if we turn into the karmic pattern, no matter how painful it is, and start to transmute the layers of it, and gradually you claim the gold you're talking about there, Jenny, and get the positive layers of that transmuted karma then become your gift of service. And when we have a very powerful karmic pattern, which most of us do, we cannot ignore it. It's in our face, so we have to deal with it. Or we may not, but then life doesn't go very well, then we get stuck. But by bringing consciousness to it, converts it into our gifts, and then the very thing we try to avoid becomes the very thing we were seeking. That special mystery thing, that puzzle we're trying to solve, is actually in our face straight away. It's always been there. That's one of the secrets of life. And that actually, the more we transmute it, the bigger our gift gets to share in the world.
So because I know you very well, this would be typical. So somebody who was quite shy became more public, and actually you were speaking on stage, and you are now out there, right?
Yeah, I was very shy as a child, and
So
now I won't shut up.
Now you get 10,000 word quota in a day.
At least.
Yeah, at least minimum.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really wonderful. And that feeling, like I have a different story than yours, but it's the actual transmutation and going. For me, it's not want to be seen, and I'm right here up front now. So I totally get that, getting into the gift of what you found very difficult to start with.
Yeah.
So breaking through, really. Yeah,
it's just about every day peeling a layer of whatever the programs are, working with whatever is in front of me.
Yeah.
Because that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets easier, right? Because
it does.
The times between the ups, or the challenges, becomes more easy and flowy and kind of amazing. That's my own experience anyway.
Yeah.
So looking at the history, like of Ascension, and what we already know now, we've talked for a little while. This time around, could you just highlight 3 key things that each and one of us can do or commit to on an individual level, not only to help humanity? We've already spoken about this, how your own transmutation inside of you will affect the rest of the world, and planet Earth, but ourselves too, and also in the process of raising vibration. So 3 key things that each and one of us could commit to that would not be too hard, that you suggest from listening to what we've been talking about already.
I think the most important one is to have a meditative practice where you connect to higher consciousness each day. Because that will then open a channel for higher self, higher consciousness to guide you. So you move from the mind to the flow of spirit through the heart. Because then you take the next right action, which opens your heart in each moment, following the spiritual signature. And that will obviously require you to heal the heart as well. Because if your heart is closed or damaged from all the things that have happened in life, then it's harder to follow that, speaking from my own experience. And the next thing is actually to be very grounded and present in each moment with what's happening, not going off into the future, and working with what's in that moment as your heart opens to it. And then bringing consciousness to whatever patterns are in the way as they come up. I mean, they come up in waves, then you get on, you clear it, transmute it, and then you get on with life. They're the key things. So connection to higher consciousness, being fully present, centered in the heart, bringing consciousness to whatever's presenting and transmuting it. And that's the key to a more fulfilling life. It's the key to actually getting on that soul path, getting to that special thing that we've all been looking for our whole lives. And that's a much more fulfilling life, joyous life. And that serves ourselves, our families, and the planet, and our communities.
Fantastic. So obviously meditation, guided meditations, sitting just in silence, all the types of different meditations would be okay, right?
Whatever you're drawn to, everyone's built differently, so you've got to find what works for you.
What feels good.
Yeah, what feels good.
Yeah. Then in terms of the healing, could you just mention a little bit about different healing tools? And because we can do so much on our own, but there's also times when we need support of others. I mean, we're here to support others anyway, and help each other. But what would you suggest?
I use something called Divine Healing Master Key, and it's based upon connection to higher self. And the higher self designed us, designed our ego onion, the structure of who we are. Therefore, it knows how to dismantle that ego onion, which we are wrestling with every day. And so it's designed so that I'm based upon the premise of asking you shall receive. So when you become conscious of that pattern, something blocking you, it's about bringing consciousness to it and asking higher self to dismantle it. And it will, provided you brought enough consciousness to it and you know how to ask in the right way, which is what's taught in divine healing. And then that layer of ego separation dismantles, it's peeled off, and you become free and you get on with life until the next one turns up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what I use.
So that's the meditation, and then being present. So we do meditation, healing, being present. I think that's something that comes with the more meditation, the more stillness you allow, you become more present. But do you have any other suggestions to be present?
I do a meditation called the Unified Chakra, which is expanding the ball of light from the heart through all the body chakras out to source, the 14th chakra, and way below the feet. So I'm connected to all the high dimensional parts of me, and I ground and center into that. And that's actually how I can stay present and within my grounded to my spirit, but also present in the moment. Obviously, it fluctuates depending on the day.
That's really good. Now, before we're going to do some, I haven't even looked in for the questions yet, but we will do some questions soon. Now, if the whole world, like the whole world was listening right now, what would you tell them? Short sentence or a couple of sentences.
I'd say pretty much it's about dropping into the heart, feel that flow, allow high consciousness to guide you in each moment, and then everything will unfold. And also know that everyone else, we're all part of one great soul. It's actually just one great soul rising in consciousness. We are separate from nothing. It's all one. Yes. Everything in the world. And view it from that perspective.
That's really amazing. Okay, so I'm going to look for the questions now. I'm just going to get my this mouse here so I can have a look. Oh, maybe that's not working. See if we have any questions here. So I'm going to go down in the Q&A. There was nothing on there actually. So anyone listening now, there wasn't any questions in the Q&A for the Zoom. So any Zoom attendees, please, if you can put your questions in. I'll have a look at Facebook at the same time now. Okay, cool. Wow, so we haven't got so many questions, but we have some comments. Let's have a look. Okay, great. So we've got Breach, we've got Emma, we've got Suzanne. There's no questions for now, so we can just carry on talking then, can't we? Anyone wanting to put a couple of questions in for Nicholas? It could be anything around awakening, ascension, whatever comes to you that you want to have some, if you've got, this is your opportunity now to get some really good answers. Let's see. There isn't anything, so I think we should just carry on. So should we talk a little bit about the coming shows, because we have 3 more shows coming up, which I'm really excited about. So maybe we want to set the energy about what is going to happen for the next 3 weeks. Maybe not go into detail so much, but
why don't you just introduce the second show and we can talk to it a little bit.
Yes, so the second one, oh, there's a question.
Oh, good.
Good. Right, so Kirsty, hi Kirsty, what happens if you don't shift through the challenges that come up for you in life? Very good question.
Yeah, what happens is that the universe basically increases the intensity of the challenge to get your attention. Basically, you get a bigger sledgehammer turning up because the soul does want to work it through, but the human ego may not want to. Okay, because the ego is resistant to change. So yeah, the universe gets your attention with bigger and bigger versions of the same challenge till you work on it. But it also means you can get very stuck emotionally, and you can drop in frequency, and it's not particularly pleasant to get stuck in a certain place, whatever that challenge is. So the universe just wants you to work it through, really. But knowing that you could work it through is a way to do it is actually one thing which we're not told. We have to sort of figure that out ourselves.
Would you say that the soul, like, have a choice almost? You know, is it a soul-led decision? This.
Well, it's more the human personality, ego, which has to make a decision. The soul wants us to grow, but once it sets us in motion, once it puts its program in with a soul contract, it sets us in motion. We're underway. It cannot interfere. It can just experience it. But so we at a human personality level have to make a decision. Okay, I'm going to go and do a healing session on this. I'm going to learn that process. I'm going to go to that workshop. So we have a free will choice to grow or not grow, and it's entirely up to us.
The decision is always ours.
It's always ours. We're in charge of how we actually work through this, because the soul doesn't know what we're going to do, because if it did, it wouldn't set it up this way. So there's a choice to grow.
There's always a choice to grow.
Yeah.
So would you say that if something comes up and you feel resistance, like that is a good sign, right? To go and do something about it.
Well, things we feel the most resistance to, or we want to block out or ignore, I still have them, on a bad day or on an opportunity day, if you want to call it that. There are other things to go to look at, to work with, because that's going to provide a breakthrough to another level of a better life, a more fulfilling life.
So it is a good idea to, when there is resistance coming up and feeling of discomfort and not wanting to look at certain things, that's a sign, really.
Well, that means you're onto a program. The ego's going, no way that I want to work with this. So you say, oh, actually we do. Because it will play all sorts of games with you. It will try and knock you off balance, keep you from consciously feeling it. Because once you feel the program and aware of it, then you're halfway there to clearing it. So it may try and...
You take it on, basically. You're like, right, okay, I can feel this. I need to look at it.
But it will numb us out with our addictions, watching too much Netflix. It's one of my addictions. Chemical addiction, work addictions, all sorts of things to numb us out. The ego will do that. It's doing everything we can to stop us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Stop us.
And then the more we disengage with it or don't address it, we feel out of alignment. We feel disconnected.
Well, life gets uncomfortable. Yeah, it'll get uncomfortable to get our attention. Yeah.
And then some people will turn to more addiction to numb out more, because it gets so uncomfortable, and then you carry on the same pattern, just completely block yourself out. Yeah.
So there's you can either avoid it, or you can be aware of it and judge it and still not do anything about it, which is the next default position of the ego. Or you can bring consciousness to it, which is the most challenging one to do, but actually in the end, the easiest path, because there's a lot less suffering and emotional pain associated with that one.
But it's only painful for a little while, and as soon as you've cleared it, it feels
very brief. It's like paradox of it. Yeah, very brief.
It is a paradox. Yeah, it's got a head on it basically, and it's like, right, okay, let's do it. And then once it's cleared, you feel great.
Yeah, because the ego makes it out. It's going to be very exquisitely painful for a very long time, but actually, when you get to it, it's actually not.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's fooling you completely.
Yeah, I mean, thinking people listening now, I think this is a really good indicator to say that if you feel like it's going to be huge, massive, like unworkable, basically, that's probably not true.
No, it's never as true.
No, it's the ego to say, oh, it's so big, don't go there, basically. But actually, it never is. It always is easy. Yeah, it's always easier than the ego sets it out to tell you that it is. Yeah. Cool. So another question. So I'll go through them. We have time. So Kirsty, thank you. If the energy is blocked for too long, can this lead to disease, either physically, mentally, and emotionally?
Yes, it can, because the energy is congealed, and it is going to create something physically, emotionally, mentally, all three. Then you've got a pretty serious situation. There's an emotional program behind most diseases for this reason. But if you lack the structure and tools for working with it emotionally, then they get worse.
So again, address whatever is behind.
Yeah, got to address the core programming, emotional programming behind it.
Yeah, I know we're not medical doctors here, but I would, from my own personal experience, I've had to address from a medical point of view, but then also address it from a program point of view, makes the healing process a lot quicker. Like, you know, it clears up. So it's not about, you have to go to A&E if you feel sick.
Yeah, well, it's not saying not to medically deal with it. It's just saying you deal with all ends of it, the physical manifestation and the emotional and the mental manifestation, to clean up something which has gone maybe a bit too far.
So always do both, but obviously, you know, seek medical help if you're very sick.
Yes.
There is another lovely message here from Drea, and she's so happy to see you. And there's so many people that are stuck in the rat race that can't seem to get out of that mind frame. So it's like, I can see what she's saying here. And they have schedules and life and a ton of stuff to deal with, and it seems very overwhelming for many. So where do you recommend that people start? And how long could this process take?
What I'd recommend first find out, well, what is your real soul destiny and purpose, which is why we have the soul contract reading. What is it that you're really passionate about? And then from there, start to heal and clear the programming identified in your soul contract. And then within, as you get clearer, finding out, well, how would I like to serve in the world with my gift of service? And that's the core of creating, if you do want to step out of the rat race, creating a business, okay, or working for someone, a more enlightened business, to actually make a difference here on earth rather than just paying the bills and being in the hamster wheel. I used to be like that 20 years ago. So it's a gradual process. And yes, it is Australian. People have got mortgages, bills, kids to educate and feed. So you just got to make a little bit of time and gradually chip away at it.
Yeah.
Okay. I left the corporate world over 20 years ago, but it took me time. I didn't quite know what I was doing. I had to actually try out some stuff and see what worked. And eventually, but I'm still here, and this business still runs. Eventually, I found out what I loved to do, which was to empower people, help them come to more worthiness, help them find their true purpose, and actually get out in the world. So it does require a lot of support. It requires people to help you create your business, help you shape your offering to make a difference here, to serve.
So on a day-to-day basis, from a practical point of view, would you recommend that you set aside a little time every day to connect to this, so that it becomes a way of life, or, you know, something that you remind yourself of every day? You do a little, because we can't shift the whole world in one go. It has to be chipped away layer by layer.
Yeah, there's a Japanese concept called kaizen, which is small incremental change. So if it's every day in the evening, or get up earlier in the morning and do a little bit more work on aligning with what your purpose is, or creating the business or the escape plan from the corporate world, whatever it is that you need to do to get there, just do a little bit. And as you see the gradual progress, after a while you look back over the year and you realize you've done an awful lot, but you've still managed to hold together a very busy lifestyle. Most of us have in that process. And then change starts to happen, and then positive feedback actually keeps us going, motivates us to realize actually we managed to do something here. So let's keep going.
So what comes to me here is commitment, consistency, and persistency, because it's almost like we have to develop these kind of ways of our minds, so that we don't fall off, because otherwise it will feel overwhelming, right? Because it's true, life is really busy, and it's so easy to get knocked off your the momentum.
Yeah, you've got to just stay focused and have a plan and stick to it. Obviously, spend a bit of time working out what is the right thing for you. Get some people who know how to do this to help, and eventually you will get there, and you can escape from the matrix, working for someone else, someone else you're not aligned with. It can be done.
Yes.
But it requires courage and putting in place all the right systems. It requires passion. It requires a lot of hard work.
Commitment. I mean, what comes to me is commitment, because it's almost like if you look at a marathon runner, he's not going to run the marathon and win the marathon unless he did a lot of practice and a lot of commitment and a lot of put the time in to make this dream real, or whatever it is. So it's the same thing, right? So, but be gentle on ourselves, and little by little. So I think hopefully that's answered the question, Drea. We have another one here. So Dina Jones, what would you say to parents who have lost children, and including adult children, and how do they transmute the pain associated with longing, loss of passion, and yet find themselves awakening from being broken open, but remain stuck and confused about their purpose and their children or their child's purpose?
It's a tough thing to lose a child. We get very attached to our children. I've got a son, and so and I have lost people. Lost my father about 18 months ago. That was very painful. But the key I discovered to that was actually to get to the ego's attachment to that individual. It was better for him because he was freed from a lot of pain. To let go of the ego's attachment, which is what causes the pain, and layer by layer, clear that attachment, and which is what I did with divine healing. And it got to a point eventually where I had let him go. And then I was free of the pain of that loss, even though it went on for a good 12, 18 months. That's the key. So again, it's dealing with the emotional separation programs, which are creating that attachment, creating the stuckness, creating the confusion. There's a natural order for peeling our ego onions. It's about engaging with it as things come up to get free of that.
So there is a way through grief. I mean, I've experienced grief myself a lot lately. But when that pain is in the heart of actually longing and missing somebody and wanting to just hold them, that is tough, right? Because
it's tough being human. It's painful being human. It's very intense emotionally as a result of that. Yeah.
And we can go and clear it, and we can work on it. But what would you say, because the loss of a child will always be in the forefront of your mind, whether you are in pain all the time or not, that's obviously a different thing. But will it ever go? You know,
if the key is to work through the emotional attachment, but also to know that the life force that was your child or parent or your cat or whoever's passed over doesn't die. Their consciousness is eternal as we are, just the form of it changes. So the other way is to connect with them either directly on the astral plane. I talk to my dad a lot actually, or through a medium, and then you realize actually it's not permanent. The consciousness that you were in love with is still there, just the physical form is not. So yeah, there is actually ultimately no death in terms of consciousness and the presence of the energy which you were connected to.
Absolutely. So it's about being
to deal with in a human form though.
So actually what comes to me when we're talking about this is that the more you create a strong path to spiritual self, if you then decided to contact a medium or do your own connection with your past ones, it becomes easier.
It does, because they'll have a conversation with you. My dad sounds just like he did when he was in the body.
Likewise, I talked about.
He behaves the same way and same mannerisms, and I realised you're not dead at all. He said, I'm a lot happier because it was tough being in a 91-year-old body falling apart. Yeah. And he's a lot happier. That's what he said to me. So
a good advice for those in grief, pain, is clearing the emotional separation programming and increase the spiritual practice. So
yeah, feeling the attachment especially, that's the key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Now, another question. We're going over a little bit. I mean, it's 6:05. I mean, we could go for another sort of 10 minutes, couldn't we? And then try to finish up the question.
Yeah.
So, how to determine which aspect to focus on? This was the question. So basically, maybe, Jill, could you just tell us what you mean? Determine which aspect to focus on, of life or challenge or purpose, or, you know, I'm not really sure. How to determine which aspect to focus on. What do you read out of that, Nicholas?
Well, I would look at someone's soul contract, which would show the choices and see what is aligned with where the soul wants to go. You know, and even simpler ways to try on the different choices in the heart. And if your heart's clear enough, whatever opens the heart the most is the soul will open the heart to the one which is the next thing to do.
She's saying here on the Star of David. So she means actually what aspect to use in the soul contract, where to focus on. But I think you just really answered that already now.
Yeah. Well, it's about overall looking at overcoming the karmic patterns, especially. That's the highest priority. Using the talents in the soul contract to do that. Also working on the goals and overall the soul destiny. So, and the soul will cycle between the different parts of the contract and work different ones. It could be a few hours, days, weeks, years, and you work through enough of that part of your karmic programming, then something else has to be worked on. So it changes. It's not static. It's very dynamic the way it works.
So basically, the more you get to know your own, well, the Star of David, so to speak, you will then you'll understand which part is playing out.
Yeah, so well, you'll look at it. You'll see, that one's playing up now because there's recommendations which come with it. You know what the program is, and you find out what's going to work best with the recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. So it just becomes useful, a little bit more straightforward than having to guess, you know, if you haven't got it all. Yeah, cool. Right, I'm going to look now. That was the Zoom. I just want to look at Facebook and see if there's any more comments, or let's have a look. Okay, yes, we have some questions here. Let's see. Okay. How do you stop denying your path when you're locked in fear?
The first thing to do is address clearing the fear and the ego, because fear only comes from within us, because we're creating our reality in each and every moment. There's actually nothing to be scared of, because the only thing that can come up to us is whatever we create. So if we dissolve the fear first, and you've got to look at, well, what hidden agendas is the ego running, locking us down, then clear those. And as you start to pick apart the ego, which is what we use divine healing for, it becomes easier, more relaxed, and eventually we basically get to a clearer space. So they're just, common defensive ego programs which are running.
There's another. This was from Emma, and this is so hi Emma, hello darling. I've seen her today, so there's another question from her saying here. So thank you for that, Nicholas. Are there certain age points when the universe calls you along and decide it's time for you to listen?
Yeah, initially when we are born, we are working with the physical part of the soul contract. We just learn to ground here, get up and running, because we're all brand new personality expressions. We're experiencing consciousness every time we come. Our soul's eternal, but I've never been here before, Nicholas, David, Ann, but I'm a personality expression of the soul. So what happens is that once you get established enough here on earth, then what happens is that there's an awakening point. And usually it's between about 35 and 42. It's sort of, we use 7-year cycles with this soul contract work. That's where people have the spiritual awakening, midlife crisis, where we look at everything we have and we say, actually, I don't like any of this. I don't like this marriage or this house or this country or this job. And we search for that deep, true purpose, because the spiritual part of our life is coming online. With a lot of people, this is happening much earlier. Some people are awake from a very young age, especially the children. are awake from the beginning. They didn't go to sleep so we did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the time to really open up and explore what are the possibilities of what really makes my heart sing.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people that Dre's talking about in California who want to get out of the hamster wheel.
Mm.
Because
Exactly.
calling them, it's time to get on with the mission.
Exactly. So basically what you're saying here is that awakenings, if you like, with people can happen at younger ages than,
it's happening younger and younger, actually.
You know, 20s. I mean, to be honest, I've worked with some people in their 20s and they're totally awake. Like there is very little, you know, or less programming than with some old people. So let's have a look if there was another question. I think that was it actually for the Facebook.
Okay.
Let's have a look quickly. I'll just have just gonna have another look, and then in the meantime, actually, we are going to talk about moving into love, away from fear, next week, which is really amazing. Could you just give us a headline for that, Nicholas? Like, what does that mean? So we set the energy for next week.
We sort of started talking about it before, actually. It's about turning to the fear of the ego, which locks us down. I was in fear for most of my life.
Yeah.
And then transmuting that fear and going and digging away at the defense systems of the ego in a loving, gradual, sustainable way. Because when we clear enough fear in our life, and our heart can open to love, can open to the flow of higher self, higher consciousness, then more love flows and life opens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's moving from an ego-focused sort of way of living to soul, heart-based focus. And when you do that, life does open, life does align, life becomes delightful, becomes something completely different to what most people are dealing with.
That's right. So that's amazing. I mean, I'm really excited about every single show that's going to be on. Last question, I think.
Okay.
And then I think we'll round it up, shall we? So it's from Norway, Bent. And hello, fellow Scandinavian. I'm Swedish, so I do feel connected to you. We have probably, so this is the question from Bent. We have probably, well, we've probably heard all this, but this is his question. And yet I'm stuck with this. How can I best get this knowledge, like, down from a mental to really, really embed it into life? So, like, we get it. This is what I think he means, on a mental knowledge, and actually really make it real.
It's about putting into practice what we learn spiritually and integrate it gradually, incrementally with the Kaizen process into our daily life. Small incremental changes, because the ego doesn't like a lot of change. And then putting different spiritual practices in place so we live a better life. It's like putting gradually better business practices in place for running our businesses. And then change gradually starts to happen. One thing at a time. And
baby steps.
Feel it in the body.
Yeah.
Feeling it in the body. Yeah.
Small
you have thoughts and ideas, but if you don't put it into action physically in yourself and in the world, it's not going to happen. It's just going to still be a thought.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. We can just round up with this, but actually ideas are just ideas until we action them. And I call it inspired action, actually, because as soon as you feel inspired, go and put some motion into place about it, right? Because otherwise it might just be gone.
Yeah.
And that's then you miss the inspiration of it as well. Cool. I think that's it. I think that we don't have any more questions for now. I am so happy how this show went. I feel really privileged to have had you on here, Nicholas, and talking.
Thanks for having me, Jenny.
That's all right. All this life-changing, knowledge and wisdom that you have. So I'm going to say goodbye and see you. I think actually we're going to put in. This is important for those who've been listening. Because I just came to me now. need to put in a link to how to get in contact with Nicholas. We've mentioned the Divine Healing and the Soul Contract, but there is a page where I'm going to put it here in the Zoom and in the Facebook. Tell me again what it was. It's the Soul Contract. No, sorry, it's the
Your Awakening Toolkit.
That's it. I had it here. So I put that in. And so for those people, it's .com, isn't it, Nicholas?
Yes.
Yeah. Your Awakening Toolkit.com. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the Zoom link now for people. You can have a look there. Actually, it's should be your Awakening Toolkit. Sorry about that, it's typo. Let me do this. Okay. Yes, so it's for you guys who want to go and explore a little bit more about what Nicholas has been talking about. That's it. And I'm going to set put that on the Facebook comment as well.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm doing it now. So we're having some great comments here from people who've been watching. So we're going to go and have a look. I'll go and have a look after we're finished. So that's it. Your Awakening Toolkit.com.
Yeah.
That's it. Great. And I'll put my details in a while as well here. Actually, you can find me on Facebook. That's more than enough. Or my website is your Rainbow Center for Soul Potential.net. Okay. So I'll see you next week, Nicholas.
Thank you, Jean, for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And really looking forward to this. And we'll do 3 more shows. So next week, it's moving out of fear into love, a much more pleasurable place to be.
Looking forward to it.
Yes, me too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Sending you lots of love.
Okay. Bye.